Imagine walking through a beautiful garden. Trees are healthy, the flowers are blooming, the soil is rich, everything seems alive. Now, imagine asking the gardener, how did this happen? I doubt they'd point to one extraordinary day. They probably wouldn't tell you about a single afternoon when everything suddenly became beautiful. Instead, they'd tell you about ordinary mornings, watering, pruning, pulling weeds, protecting new growth, returning day after day, even when nothing appeared to be changing. That's how gardens grow. And I think that's how people grow too. One of the biggest misconceptions about change is that it happens all at once. One decision, one breakthrough, one perfect morning where everything finally comes together. Real life doesn't usually work that way, and neither does a garden. The life you want is almost always the result of small acts of faithful attention repeated over time. And that's why I really don't think that the real lesson of this phase has been attention. Attention was simply the doorway. The deeper lesson has always been about stewardship. Learning to faithfully care for something valuable that's been placed in your hands. Because attention isn't just another resource you use, it's a quiet force shaping every part of your life. Where your attention goes, your thoughts follow, your decisions follow, your habits follow, and eventually your life follows. And that's why becoming intentional isn't about trying harder. It's about becoming a better steward. Someone who understands that every ordinary day is another opportunity to cultivate the kind of life they hope to live. You don't become a steward because you never drift. You become one because you keep returning again and again and again. That's what gardeners do. And perhaps that's what intentional people do too. Another big misconception about personal growth is that it happens because of one life-changing decision. It rarely does. Most lasting change is much quieter than that. It's built through repeated attention. Think about the strongest relationships in your life. They probably weren't built because of one unforgettable conversation. They were built through thousands of ordinary moments, showing up, listening, keeping promises, being present. And the same is true of your character, your health, your peace of mind, your purpose. None of them appear by accident. They become the natural result of what consistently receives your care. That's why stewardship matters. Because whatever you stop tending doesn't remain the same. Imagine walking away from a garden for an entire season. You don't have to plant weeds. You don't have to invite them. You simply stop caring for what belongs there. Nature quietly fills the neglected spaces. When we stop directing our attention, distraction grows. When we stop protecting it, noise grows. When we stop choosing our priorities, urgency grows. When we stop pausing before we respond, reaction grows. None of those things arrive all at once. They grow quietly, almost unnoticed, until one day they begin shaping the entire landscape of our lives. And that's why I think intentional living isn't primarily about eliminating what's wrong. It's about faithfully strengthening what's right. A healthy gardener doesn't spend every waking hour fighting weeds. Most of the work is spent nourishing healthy growth, because healthy plants eventually leave very little room for weeds to flourish. I think there's a profound lesson in that. Many of us spend enormous amounts of energy fighting the person we don't want to become, trying to eliminate bad habits, trying to stop overthinking, trying to worry less. Those efforts matter, but stewardship asks a better question. What deserves to be cultivated instead? And that question changes everything, because attention always strengthens whatever it repeatedly visits. Spend your attention on gratitude, gratitude grows. Spend it on learning, wisdom grows. Spend it on meaningful relationships, trust grows. Spend it on resentment, resentment grows. Spend it on fear, and fear grows. Your attention is always cultivating something, whether you intend it or not. And that's why becoming intentional isn't only about protecting your attention from the wrong things. It's about faithfully nourishing the right ones. The gardener understands something the rest of us often forget. Growth isn't forced, it's cultivated. You can't command a seed to grow. You prepare the soil. You water consistently. You protect what matters. And then you trust the process. That's what stewardship looks like. Not controlling every outcome, but faithfully caring for the conditions that make healthy outcomes possible. And perhaps that's one of the most hopeful ideas in this entire phase. You don't have to transform your life today. You simply have to faithfully tend the garden you've been given today. Because tomorrow's harvest is already beginning in the attention you choose to cultivate now. And there's another reason I love the idea of stewardship. It removes pressure to be perfect. So many people give up on change because they expect transformation to happen immediately. They miss one morning, skip one workout, lose their patience, break one good habit, and they quietly conclude, I guess I'm back where I started. But that's not how a gardener thinks. A gardener understands that one storm doesn't erase the entire season. One weed doesn't destroy the harvest. One difficult day doesn't undo months of faithful care. They simply return. And I think that's one of the healthiest perspectives we can bring into our own lives. Because intentional living isn't measured by perfection. It's measured by faithfulness. Faithfulness to our values. Faithfulness to our priorities. Faithfulness to returning your attention every time it begins to drift. That's what you've really been practicing throughout the entire phase. First, you learned to direct your attention. Then you learned to protect it. Then you decided what deserved it. Then you learned to respond instead of reacting. And now you can see those weren't separate lessons at all. They were all teaching you how to tend to the same garden. Each lesson gave you another tool. Attention prepared the soil. Boundaries build the fence. Priorities determine what would be planted. Thoughtful responses protected new growth when storms arrived. And now the picture is complete. This isn't a collection of productivity techniques. It's a way of living, one faithful decision at a time. And I've noticed something else about gardens. Most of the important work happens where no one is watching. Roots grow underground. Seeds break open beneath the surface. The most important transformation is usually invisible long before it becomes obvious. And people aren't very different. The greatest changes in your life probably won't begin with applause. They'll begin in ordinary moments that no one else will ever see. The moment you choose gratitude instead of resentment. The moment you put your phone down and give someone your full attention. The moment you pause before reacting. The moment you return to what matters instead of chasing what is merely urgent. And those moments may seem small, but small moments repeated faithfully become a life. That's why comparison is so dangerous. We compare someone else's visible harvest to our own invisible cultivation. We see their success, their confidence, their peace. What we don't see are the thousands of ordinary days that produce those things. The quiet mornings, the repeated choices, the faithful returns. Stewardship teaches patience. It reminds us that growth has its own pace, and that lasting change is usually happening long before we can measure it. That's encouraging because it means today's small decision is never really small. Every intentional moment is preparing tomorrow's soil. Every faithful return is strengthening unseen roots. Every wise choice is quietly becoming part of the person that you're becoming. And over time, those ordinary moments produce an extraordinary harvest. Not because you forced it, but because you faithfully cultivated it. So what does stewardship look like tomorrow morning? It begins with one simple question. And that's not, what do I have to get done today? But rather it's, what do I want to cultivate today? And trust me, those are very different questions. One begins with pressure, the other begins with purpose. Maybe today you want to cultivate patience. Maybe it's gratitude. Maybe it's courage. Maybe it's deeper presence with your family. Maybe it's meaningful progress on work that reflects who you're becoming. Whatever your answer is, let it become the lens through which you make your decisions. Then something else will happen, because it always does. Your attention will drift. You'll get distracted. Someone will interrupt you. You'll react before you've had time to think. You'll lose sight of what mattered. And when that happens, don't start over. Just simply return. I've come to believe that those two words may be the most encouraging words in intentional living. Simply return. Return to your priorities. Return to your values. Return to your relationships. Return to your purpose. Return to the person you're trying to become. That's what gardeners do. They don't abandon the garden because weeds appeared overnight. They remove the weeds and continue caring for what matters. And I found another practice that quietly reinforces this way of living. At the end of each day, before you go to sleep, ask yourself two questions. What did I cultivate today? And then, what did I unintentionally allow to grow? And don't ask those questions to criticize yourself. Ask them to become more aware. Perhaps gratitude received your attention today. And if that's the case, celebrate that. Perhaps meaningful work moved forward. Celebrate that too. Perhaps resentment quietly occupied more space than it deserved. Notice it. Perhaps worry followed you longer than it should have. Notice that. A steward doesn't ignore the condition of the garden. A steward walks through it regularly, observes it, learns from it, returns tomorrow ready to continue to work. And that's today's daily focus. Choose one quality you want to cultivate today. Not 10, just one. Then, whenever your attention begins drifting somewhere that doesn't support it, return. Not with guilt, not with frustration, but with quiet confidence. Because faithful stewardship has never been measured by one perfect day. It's measured by the willingness to keep returning again and again and again. Because every intentional return plants another seed. Every faithful decision strengthens another root. Every ordinary act of stewardship quietly shapes the harvest that you're becoming. And one day, you'll look back and realize the life you hoped for wasn't built through one extraordinary moment. It grew because you kept showing up to tend the garden, day after day, season after season, one faithful return at a time. As we come to the end of this phase, I'd like you to look back for just a moment. When we began, we weren't talking about gardens. We were talking about attention, listening to notice it, direct it, protect it, choose what deserved it, respond intentionally when life tried to pull it away. And at the time, those probably felt like separate lessons. But now you can see why they were all teaching the same way of living. Not better productivity, not better time management, but better stewardship. Because stewardship has never been about doing more. It's about faithfully caring for what matters most. Think about everything we've discovered together. Attention is the soil, boundaries protected, priorities determine what gets planted, wise responses protect new growth when storms arrive. And every time you return, you cultivate the person you're becoming. That's the rhythm of intentional life. Not perfection, return. Not flawless performance, faithfulness. I think that's why this lesson feels so hopeful. You don't have to wake up tomorrow as a completely different person. You don't have to solve every weakness. You don't have to break every bad habit or fix every mistake you've made. You simply have to tend today's garden. Tomorrow will ask you to do the same, and the day after that. And that's how meaningful lives are built. Not through dramatic moments that everyone notices, but through ordinary moments that almost no one sees. One thoughtful decision, one protected priority, one patient response, one faithful return. And those moments rarely feel significant while they're happening, but together they become your character, they become your relationships, they become your peace, they become your life. And that's why I've come to believe that the greatest harvest you'll ever experience won't simply be what you accomplish. It will be who you become while faithfully cultivating what matters most. So as you leave this phase, remember the image that we've carried together, the garden. There will be seasons of rapid growth. There will be seasons where very little seems to happen. There will be storms. There will be weeds. There will be days when you wonder whether anything is changing at all. Keep tending the garden anyway. Keep returning. Keep trusting the quiet work that no one else can see. Because one day you'll look around and realize that the life that you've been hoping for didn't happen by accident. It grew one ordinary day at a time, one faithful decision at a time, one intentional return at a time. And remember this, you become the steward of your life the moment you become the steward of your attention. Because the harvest of your future is already growing in the attention you faithfully cultivate today. Today's daily focus. Choose one quality you want to cultivate today. When your attention drifts, and it will, then you simply return. Not with guilt, with faithfulness. And here's a memorable principle. The harvest of your future is already growing in the attention you faithfully cultivate today.